everybody, to Cinema Royale. I am Travis Thompson of punchdrunkcritics.com, and I am back from Sundance. I've been gone for like 10 days, gone nowhere. Gone to my couch into the refrigerators, about as far as I've gone. Of course, Sundance was virtual for the second year in a row, which is, makes me sad still, but it is what it is. The festival is now over. The awards have been given out, movies have been acquired. And now it's time to look back and see what were some of the best films of the festival, what were some of the worsts, and what were some of the big things that emerged from the festival this year. I've pretty much gone on record in social media and elsewhere talking about how I think this is kind of a down year for Sundance. Not only did they not have as many films as they normally do, but the films themselves did not really excite me, with the exception of a couple. This was kind of a down year, and I think for the most part, people will agree with that, especially those of us who've been going for a lot of years in a row. But someone who has never gone before until now and does not have that frame of reference is Cortland Jacoby, who you know from Punch Drunk Critics. This was her first year at Sundance. How are you doing, Cortland?
I am very tired, but very happy to be here in the last 2 days.
Come on, it's been over for like 2 days. How are you still tired?
Well, technically it ended last night at midnight on
Mountain
Time.
Yeah.
So I was still watching stuff. I was like trying to get the high in still. So yeah, it's been good. It's been really good.
So how would you tell me about your first Sundance experience? How would you rank it? How did it go for you?
First of all, like, it's a dream. I've thought of doing Sundance since I was in, I was 13 and Juno came out and I was like, what festival is Sundance? And heard about that for the first time. So it was an absolute dream to be there. I would be lying if I said it wasn't a downer that it was completely virtual. We were planning on going probably about 3 weeks out, and we actually called it before the festival did, only by a couple of days. But yeah, it was a really interesting experience to do everything from home. I like this festival from home more than we've done Middleburg together, the Middleburg Film Festival from home, and I think this is a much more cohesive experience.
Yeah, I've gotten, like I said, I get disappointed. I don't mind doing festivals from home for just about anything else. I don't mind doing South by Southwest from home because I don't ever want to go to Austin. I have no desire to ever go to Texas ever. So I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do it from home. That's fine. I'll probably do it again this year if they do anything virtual from there. But Sundance is a place that I love going. I take that week off because I want to go to Park City and be in there. It just feels different when you're there in that environment. It's just a completely different thing. Surrounded by people that and work with and talk to and you've never met and all sorts of stuff. It's just different. So but in terms of like the festival and the content, what were some of the overall things that you took away from this year, this being your first Sundance experience?
I have to say, there's nothing that I really, really hated. I felt like there was a lot of stuff that was middle of the road, but nothing I really absolutely despised. I would say that. You and I kind of talked about how much dancing there was at this festival, which I think is kind of funny. I can name 4 or 5 films that I saw out of the 23 that all had like a dancing scene thrown in there, which I think is kind of interesting given COVID times. But yeah, nothing I
do believe there's reason for that, and I told you about it before. We talked about
right, because of Ex
Machina. I do believe that Ex Machina set the precedent.
But I just thought it was interesting that like this year there seemed like there was
it's a lot of, and it seems to be like there's a lot of dancing movie scenes and movies at Sundance almost every year now. Because it's one of those things where, especially if you're a small film trying to get attention, trying to get buzz, a dance scene will do it. Like if it becomes a meme or anything, then people might go check out your movie, and that's kind of how it works. So, I mean, of course, dance scenes have been in movies forever, and they all have a certain a certain kind of meaning to them. But lately, I think they've become more for publicizing, helping to publicize a film, which is I got no problem with that at all. But it does seem like there were a lot of them this year.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some some movies that were big emerging from the festival that we heard of, because every year, you go in and you may have heard about most of these films, but there's always one or two that kind of pop up out of nowhere. um One for me that absolutely did that, because I didn't like this filmmaker's previous film, was Cha Cha Real Smooth, which is also one of the ones that got a huge deal. It was picked up by Apple for 15 million bucks. $15 million picked up at Sundance is a lot of money. It's a lot of money, because a lot of these movies don't make $15 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest example that really derailed things for indie films for a lot of years was Tadpole. When Tadpole got picked up, I think for like 12 million or something like that, and then it came out, and I think it made like $1 million, maybe
Yeah.
even less. Like, no one saw it, no one cared, and it's because, look, uh, producers and things like that, people who acquire films, they get wrapped up in the festival bubble as much as we do sometimes. And a movie that is hot at Sundance does not necessarily mean it's going to be hot in general release. But Cha Cha Real Smooth, because like it could be something that different. For one thing, it stars Dakota Johnson, who is really on fire right now. I think she's one of the few people who can maybe sell a movie just with her name. And writer, director, and star Cooper Raiff seems like he's headed for bigger and better things. And it's also a really sweet, heartwarming story. I think people will kind of like that. You had a chance to see Cha Cha Real Smooth as well as I did. I loved it. What did you think of it?
I absolutely loved it. It's one of Dakota's two films at the festival. She was also in Am I Okay? I absolutely
That
adored
one?
what?
Did you see Am I Okay?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did. And it's very much of a you texted me, you're like, this is a very you movie. And I agree with you, but I did not like it as much as I thought I would. But Cha Cha Real Smooth, I adored. I thought that it was really well written, really funny. The music was amazing. And I think for me, it's the one Sundance crowd pleaser. I feel like there's one that comes out every year. CODA was last year's. The year before was, I would say, Palm Springs. I mean, Juno was one. Little Miss Sunshine. This one, I feel like, is the movie that has legs, if anything. It's sort of that like coming of age dramedy feel that there's always one. Every Sundance, there's always one. So,
yeah, there's usually more than one. There's usually like 10.
yeah.
There's a lot of them even this year as well. I mean, even to some extent, a movie like Emergency is right. A coming of age story. There's coming of age stories littered everywhere in Sundance. Summering is a coming of age story in a way too. It's not very good, but it's a coming of age story. Which reminds me, I never did put up that interview. Oops, I need to do that. I forgot all about it. I think I'm trying to forget that movie, and so I've forgotten about the interview too. Talk to me a little bit about something that you saw that that surprised you, that you weren't expecting much from.
Brian and Charles. This
is a robot movie, right?
It is a robot movie out of England, Wales specifically. It's very reminiscent of there's some What We Do in the Shadows vibes. Kind of if you're into the weird comedy of Britain, your Noel Fieldings, your I hate to say Ricky Gervais because he's more middle of the line there. But the actor, I forget his name, David. Let me find my notes. But it's about a robot named Charles, and he's created by a kind of off-kilts inventor named Brian. And if this story sounds a little bit familiar, it's probably because it is reminiscent of Frankenstein. Right. And it's this weird little comedy that's also a mockumentary, hence the What We Do in the Shadows vibe. And it's by Jim Harper, who is a British filmmaker. And it's really, really sweet. It's very interesting and weird. The robot loves to eat cabbages. It's just an odd film that has a really nice arc. At one point, the mockumentary vibes kind of fall away. And for me, that's where the story kind of lacked. It didn't push into its form enough for myself. But it's a really, really solid and sweet movie, and I can see it kind of going the same way as the 2014 version of What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah. Interesting. Name something else for me that you also really loved at the festival.
That I really loved. Well, there's a couple. I think I enjoyed the festival a little bit more than you did, but I don't.
Oh yeah, I imagine you did. I mean, look, I don't want to say they're not like it was like the worst year ever. It was probably the worst year for me at Sundance, like in terms of movies that I was like truly excited about. This is like year 12 for me or something like that. So it's not my favorite year. Even my first year, I think, when I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I was wandering around Park City like an idiot. I think I still saw more movies that I loved that year than this. But there were some good ones that popped up for me, and I'll get to those in a minute. But I don't want to make it seem like the year was absolutely atrocious. There were some good stuff in there too.
There was some good things. For me, I feel like a lot of the stuff that I was going into wanting to see, that kind of stuff I liked. One of which was being Good Luck to You, Leo Grand. I really enjoyed that movie.
Emma Thompson, and that got picked up also. Emma
Thompson, picked up by Searchlight, and Daryl McCormick, and it's directed by Sophie Hyde. And I'm gonna just be straight. It's about sex work, and you've never seen sex work like this on screen. It's positive. It's honest.
I wouldn't throw that challenge out there.
Well, no, you haven't though. I think there's often times, we see sex work through the eyes of, the outdated term prostitute, and it's very gritty and people are being beat up. This isn't that at all. It's a very modern, safe approach to the form. Emma Thompson plays.
It's not the Deuce or anything like that.
Right. It's not the Deuce at all. Emma Thompson plays a retired school teacher who's very uptight, and her husband died, and she realizes that she hasn't had real good sex in her life, and so she hires a sex worker named Leo Grand, played by Daryl McCormick, and he kind of opens her eyes, if you will. I'm trying really hard not to do innuendos here, but yeah, it's a really, really sweet movie. It's almost like if my dinner with Andre took place in a hotel room and there was an orgasm after. Like, it's very sweet. Things are broken up into 4 vignettes of their 4 separate meetings. It's a really sweet movie, a really great movie. I smiled the entire time. Don't watch it with your mom, but it's great. It's a really good one. I did not watch it with my mom, but I was like, this is one you need to see, but not with me. But it's a really, really, really great film, and
all right. I'm glad. You also saw a number of films that dealt with a single issue, like abortion. You said 3 or 4 of those movies, actually, didn't you?
I watched 3. What I have darkenly called my abortion trio.
Yeah.
Films. There were 3 films centering on abortion at this year's festival. The first being Called Jane, which is a fictionalized take on the Jane Collective in Chicago during the 60s that provided over 11,000 abortions to women in the area. And that is a very Hollywood, that's one of the middle of the road ones that I had. Very Hollywood take on it, starring Elizabeth Banks. And then you also have The Janes, which is the documentary version of that, and that will be on HBO this year. That was a really good, informative documentary. Both of those are not very political. Right. It very much is this is kind of how it happened, and the unsaid thing is this is where we're going to return to if Roe v. Wade is overturned.
You said Elizabeth Banks. Is it a comedy?
Not really. There is a dancing scene in that. That's too, ironically, but it's an abortion movie. But yeah, it is Elizabeth Banks. It is not funny. She is definitely not Wet Hot American Summer here, and more. She was also in Mrs. America. I don't know if you saw that series about the ERM.
Yes, I did. I really enjoyed that.
But it's much more that, I would say. Okay. She is like a common housewife who's very much okay being a housewife. She has a pregnancy that is fatal. Essentially, she will die if she gives birth to this child. And the hoops that she has to jump through in order to give birth to that child are humiliating, or to get an abortion are humiliating. And so she finds a note on the street that says, "Call Jane," and she does, and she gets sucked in. And
Did
And
you?
then the third film is called Happening. It's a French film, and
Which one is that one?
Happening.
Okay, okay, yeah.
Happening. And it talks about abortion in the 60s, but in France, and how hard it was to do that. If you're looking for like a timeline on like when abortion was legal in France, it's about the same. I think France was 1975, so a couple of years after, because Roe in 73, I believe.
Mhm.
We're in our 49th year of Roe being allowed. So yeah, that I think looks at abortion very honestly. It's divided up in weeks, so we see her kind of go throughout up to 12 weeks of her trying to figure out how to get rid of this pregnancy, and she's on her own the entire time. Very unflinching, very raw. It is gory, you see things, but I think it's also, again, a testament to where we could go back to. And the interesting thing of it is that it brings in the internationality of this issue, that it's not just an American thing, that it's not just a woman thing. It's also, it's a French woman thing. It's an Italian woman thing. It's a, South African woman thing. It's an entire,
Yeah, it's a global thing. It's a global issue.
Absolutely.
I mean, and people don't know, but Sundance very much takes on themes each year.
Yeah.
And they pay attention to politics. Yeah. And trust me, the selection of so many films on this subject is not a coincidence.
Absolutely.
With everything that's going on in our country right now, women's rights being struck down left and right, it seems. This was very much on purpose, I believe. That's, I actually, one of the things I like about Sundance is that they do that, is that they pay attention and they focus on certain things at certain times.
Continuing on with the female thing, one film that I think is maybe my favorite film of the festival, and I think it's one of yours as well, is Fresh, with Sebastian Stan and Daisy Edgar.
This is one of those movies that I think is instantly marketable if they wanted to market it.
I mean, but
as hard as gruesome as it is, I think you could sell Sebastian Stan being this character very easily.
To be fair, like Sebastian Stan is just marketable right now. You could put him in have him reading a phone book and it would sell, for 15 million. The thing that I love about that movie is that it seems like a natural progression for Stan in terms of like where his career is going. He's kind of incrementally playing more and more of an asshole. You see that in I, Tonya. You're seeing that in Pam and Tommy, which comes out on Friday. And then you kind of have, I feel like this is like the top of the pyramid. He plays a doctor who goes on a date with Noah, a young woman played by Daisy Edgar Jones, and she's amazing. And they kind of fall in love and have this really sweet love story, and it does not end the way you think.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be boy meets girl, girl meets boy, and it kind of is up to a point, and then it's suddenly very much not.
And then the credits roll, right? You have to wait for the title card a good 30 to 40 minutes, and once it drops, you're like, oh.
It becomes a very different movie, and it's one of those films that I encourage people to go in without knowing a whole lot.
Right.
If you don't know what happens to them that breaks up this boy meets girl thing, then try to keep it that way.
My review is spoiler free. If you are interested, go on. My review of the film is spoiler free. So I highly, highly, highly recommend. It's really well done and talks about the horrors of modern dating, directed by Mimi Cave, who's wonderful, and then written by Lauren Kahn, who I really liked. Abiza, the Gillian Jacobs Richard Madden movie. She wrote that, the Netflix film.
God, which movie was that?
Abiza.
Oh, Abiza.
Yeah.
It was her and it was her, huh?
Is it pronounced Abiza or Abiza? Is it either? I thought it was okay.
Yeah, it was her and Vanessa Bayer.
And Richard Madden.
Yeah, and the black girl who I don't remember.
I
don't remember her name, which kind of sucks. But yeah, I remember liking that movie because it had Gillian Jacobs and Vanessa Bayer, who are,
great,
pretty high up on my list. So So yeah, I remember liking that movie for that, but the movie itself isn't really all that great. It's
Oh, but I will say that that's one of my go-to, like if I'm not in a good mood, I will watch Ibiza. And one of the reasons why I love that movie is there's Richard Madden says some of the dreamiest lines in that. And that dreaminess.
It's like kind of like White Girls Trip. Almost.
It is almost like White Girls Trip. It is.
Yeah.
But Richard Madden says some of the dreamiest lines in there, and I really feel like that transfers over really well to Fresh, because you really do get pulled in that first 30-40 minutes into who Stan is, and you fall in love with them. Just
no. So me and some of my friends were most of us were watching it around the same time. So one of the cool things about doing this stuff virtually is that you can kind of talk to your friends who are watching the movies at the same time as you're watching it.
And I kept checking in with you. I was like, "Have you seen it yet? Have you seen it yet?" It's so good. A lot of fun.
So I was talking with a couple of my friends while we were all watching Fresh at the same time, and we were kind of like, watching this with my girl, and Sebastian Stan is completely gruesome and he's gross and all this kind of stuff, but she still wants to fuck him, really. I mean, even though he's awful because he's Sebastian Stan, even though he's awful and he's terrible.
I think that's the thing,
but
right?
Sebastian Stan.
So I think, in the course of his career, this is kind of the height of the gross guy that he will play. You can see why he keeps getting cast as these dudes. It's because he's so fucking looking.
Yeah, I think the first time I saw him play a role like that was, God, it was in another Sundance movie. It was
Time Machine. Okay.
It was in the Bronze. When I really
yes
thought about him, and he was playing that her awful boyfriend trainer gymnast guy or whatever, and it was just he was terrible. But
one scene that millions of women have watched over and over and over again.
I remember being the only person to get a movie a positive review out of Sundance that year. I did not stop hearing about that for a long time. I interviewed her for that movie too. I think so. Yeah. I guess so. I was the only one who gave it a thumbs up. but anyway. All right. So in terms of films that you think might emerge out of this movie, besides Fresh, we just talked about Fresh could be one that
well, Fresh is actually going to be on Hulu March 4th. So the wait for that is not very long.
Yep.
I think that
do you see a potential CODA out of anything that you saw? CODA was the breakout film from Sundance last year, really.
I do, but it's not what you think it's going to be.
Okay.
The biggest breakout film, the one that kind of won the overall audience award, was Navalny, which is a documentary about Alexei Navalny.
Did you get to see that?
I did get to see that.
I haven't seen your review. Where's that?
I told you I told you I saw it. And I watched it yesterday. So yeah. I really liked that movie. I can see the universal appeal of it. You think it's going to be very, very sad and dark. It's about Alexei Navalny, the Russian opposition party guy who was poisoned, and the movie kind of picks up from the point when he was poisoned in Germany, him figuring out who poisoned him, and then him going back to Russia. I think I laughed more in this movie than in any other film at Sundance.
Wow, that's saying something.
Navalny is such a commanding presence, a funny presence. He knows how to market himself. He knows how to perform for the camera. It's a really interesting, almost character study but a documentary of this person. I think that is going to be kind of the film that comes out of Sundance. I would say that or Fresh. But Navalny definitely is that crowd pleaser that everybody wants.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I really wanted to see Navalny because I'm very much into politics, and I like Navalny every time I've seen him on the camera. You're right; he's very charismatic, which is one of the reasons why Putin doesn't like him. He's people sort of gravitate to him in a way they don't gravitate to Putin. So you can see why he keeps throwing his ass in jail and trying to kill him.
At one point, you see him doing TikTok videos Like, I don't know if you're like big on your TikTok trends, but he does the how bizarre trend at one point, and it's just charming. You're just sitting there laughing. It's great.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you also see really, really hard moments too of like him saying goodbye to his kids, and it's just it's really
Yeah.
solid movie by I think it's Daniel Rohr is his name. It's very good, and he's 29 too. There's so many young filmmakers at this festival.
Oh yeah, absolutely. A couple movies that stood out for me, you know, I talked about Fresh already. I think my favorite movie of the festival though was Emily the Criminal, um, with Aubrey Plaza. It's such a role for her that you've never seen before. It's really, like I said in my post about it, I hate the word gritty, but it is one movie that it kind of fits the description of the film, where she plays a working class girl in Los Angeles, you know, hard up for money like so many people, trying to get by, especially out there, just trying to squeak by with like gig work and shit like that. And she kind of lucks into a job buying things off with fraudulent credit cards and then reselling them in a black market, and a whole kind of criminal empire behind that, and the kind of the danger it puts her in feels real. And it's not one of those movies like big in Hollywood style, like guns everywhere and holdups and stuff like that. It's not like that. The dangers are more common. And I just thought it was such a terrific film, man. And had me on the edge of my seat. I loved it. I don't think that's been acquired yet. I don't think so, but I think there's good enough buzz for it that it might.
I did not love that movie as much as you do. That was one of the ones I felt pretty middle of the road on. But I'm glad you liked it.
What didn't you like about Emily the Criminal?
I had.
I'll probably mute you while you start talking about it. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I had an issue with, you know, you normally have issues with pacing. I had a real issue with pacing with this film.
Oh yeah, I kind of mentioned that in my review that it skips some steps. Like there's some stuff that happens in there, and I think it kind of makes some jumps some leaps and bounds ahead in a few places for me. And I was like, but if you're invested, that stuff I don't think if you're invested, that stuff won't bother you too much. You'll just notice it, recognize it, like, yeah, okay, kind of go with it anyway.
I also felt like it was almost two different movies at one point, which I didn't love, like the stuff going on with her and her friend, and then also the stuff that was happening with the criminal enterprise.
I kind of like how this stuff.
It wasn't necessarily my least favorite of the festival. Yeah. I just didn't love it.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I also like the film that's coming out real soon called You Won't Be Alone. It has Noomi Rapace in it. Alice Englert, big fan of both of them.
Is that the witch one? I heard really good things.
Yes, it is the witch movie, and I started watching it, and you know, as we were winding down to the festival, I was having kind of less and less interest in the festival. So I was like, I'm gonna watch this. I was like, I'm gonna watch this because I had it in my top 10 movies to watch. I think I watched everything that was on my top 10. I was like, I have it on my top 10 list, so I'm gonna watch it. And plus, it's got Noomi Rapace, it'll say Alice Englert, and I'll pretty much watch anything with those two. But the first like 15 minutes into it, I was like, you know, most of it's in another language. It's moving kind of slow. Is it just trying to be the witch again? You know, which a lot of movies since The Witch are trying to be. Yeah. And I was like, I might just shut it off and like pretend I didn't start it. You know, I just missed it. I didn't get a chance to see it. Yeah. But right around the time when I started thinking that, it really picks up. Like the pace doesn't pick up, but I mean like what happens in the story picks up. Like It's not just the witch or a movie trying to be the witch. Like it's doing something completely different. And it's surprisingly hopeful and life affirming, which I thought was weird because it is also very gruesome and it's also very dark. You know, she's basically playing a shape-shifting witch who kind of sets herself within human society and tries to be human, taking all these different forms from people that she has to kill. She has to kill to take their form.
So she's like Arya Stark.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah. Only her transformation is a lot more gruesome than
Arya's.
Yeah, but she takes the form of like a poor woman, a poor mother, and then she becomes a man, and then she becomes a child. So she experiences all these different things, and she doesn't know anything about humanity. So she's learning about humanity through all these different forms. And and of course, when she's a woman, she realizes all these different things. She's living in like this little small society, like in the 18th century. So it's like, the women are second class citizens, and she's got to learn to deal with that. She's never even like really spoken before. So it's like it's just really weird. There's a lot of stuff that happens in it, but it's a lot of learning going on in it. And I think it's really observant. I think it's really well done. So it's not The Witch, and I'm hoping that since it is coming out fairly soon, that it rides some of the good buzz that it has coming out at the festival and does pretty well. That's my hope anyway. So that was
That's
probably
what
the
I want to
biggest
check out.
surprise for me, was that I liked that movie as much as I did, because I really did. So, and there are other ones that for me that were pretty good. Like 892 was pretty good. With
Which won
John.
the best cast award at the festival.
Yeah, yeah, best ensemble was pretty good. I thought God's Country with Tandwi Newton was pretty good. Kind of waste an opportunity there with her, I think, especially with the subject matter dealing with race and race relations in red states. It could have been a little bit more than it was. She's good. Am I okay? Now, we talked about that. I was brought up a little bit earlier. What did you said that you didn't like it quite as much as I thought you would.
Yeah.
What was their issue with Am I Okay? This is the film co-directed by Tig Notaro and her Stephanie Allen.
Yeah.
Dakota Johnson starring in it, and I forget the other girl's name. She's really good in it, I thought.
Yeah, she was in Ex Machina.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And Maniac and
Kiersey Clemens is in it.
Crazy Rich Asians, actually. Yeah, I'm forgetting her name too. Am I okay? There have been so many films in the last 10 years alone about, women in their late 20s, early 30s trying to figure it out. I really did like that, Dakota Johnson plays a woman who is figuring out that she's gay in her 30s, which is kind of, we often hear stories of like, oh, I knew I was different when I was 5, that's this kind of late.
It's usually teens. And whenever we see this kind of story now, it's usually the Love Simon type model.
Right. And I think that was really interesting and smart to do it later in life, which happened for Tig Notaro's partner. They actually met on another Sundance film and fell in love, and she had never dated a woman before, and now they have 2 kids, right? So yeah, I liked it. I don't know if it wasn't bantery enough for me. I didn't know if it was like funny enough. I did watch it. It was one of the last ones I watched at the festival, so I think I was really burnt out.
Yeah.
It just didn't have that zhuzh that you want a film like that.
I thought it was very plain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. Look, I mean, the coming out story they've been doing for a while now, and a lot of them tend to follow the same beats. This one kind of followed the same beats. The only thing that made it different was that she's a bit older. Mm-hmm. It even had the quirky like first relationship thing with like Kiersey Clemens, which I thought was cute. Like it was cute. But that was it. It was just cute.
I kept waiting for the other person, her best friend, to like also be in love with her. Like I kept waiting for some sort
that would have been the route that like a big Hollywood version of this movie would have done.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they didn't go that route. And I actually liked their friendship, the way that worked out. Probably the best thing about the movie was that friendship. But even that, I thought they could have taken further. It felt like nothing was taken very far. This felt very safe. It felt very safe.
Yeah. And I thought that
not bad. In fact, I liked it. I enjoyed it because I think Dakota Johnson's like really funny in it. But
I think she's really funny with it in it. I will say that, and this is kind of, I really like Dakota Johnson as an actress. I will say that she just plays different shades of herself. It feels like her.
I don't know her, so I can't say that.
Well, her character in Cha Cha Real Smooth is very similar to this, I would say. Like they're not super different.
When we say the stuff like that, we always got to remember that we don't know them. I don't know what she's like.
No,
but,
absolutely. From what I've seen in interviews,
she can play versions of the same type of character,
right?
Which is probably
from interviews.
I think she has the same. I think what ends up happening when we say stuff like that is that a lot of these actors have the same body tics that they use for just about everything. So like gestures and things like that.
Well, not even just that. I mean, I've seen her in a couple interviews, and I know interviews are very different than who they are in real life. And then seeing her speak at the Middleburg Film Festival this past year for the Lost Daughter, excuse me. There seemed like a very similar vibe there. There was definitely herself infused to every character, and I don't think I've seen her played, super different out of, I've never been so blown away by a performance where I'm like, wow, that's really different for Dakota Johnson, and that's okay. I don't think every actor, needs to have this amazing. But I thought she was the best part of Am I Okay? I was kind of bummed that some of the comedic secondary performances weren't pushed as hard. You have Sean Hayes in there, and you don't let him do what Sean Hayes does. Jermaine Fowler plays. I was
quite glad to see very little of Sean Hayes. Quite glad to see as little as possible of Jermaine Fowler. I'm glad we didn't see any more.
But I don't know. I wish we had a little bit more. I thought that he's funnier than what the material they gave him in that was.
Well, Sean Hayes' part felt like it had been chopped up or something, or chopped out.
Yeah. I'm sure that they're,
a couple of the movies that really worked for me. I think Duel with Karen Gillan has potential, because that got picked up maybe by Shudder. I don't know. I can't remember who picked it up. But that one got picked up, and I think that one has potential to possibly break out on a smaller scale.
I think that would have more of a cult following. I did not love that film. It was one of those films where I appreciated what they were doing. It was not for me.
Yeah. After Yang, Kokonada, one of my favorite filmmakers. I really enjoyed that. Really, really interesting take on artificial intelligence movies, because there've been a few of those lately, and I compared it to Ex Machina in a positive way as well.
I hope that CODA does different. I hope that each film he does is a different genre. It's just quiet, I hope we get a quiet musical from him, or a quiet action film, or there's some sort of. I just love what he does.
I'd love to see him do an action film. It'd be perfect.
Yeah, I would love it.
So what are your final thoughts about Sundance this year? For me, I mentioned some of the films I really liked. I mentioned some of the films that disappointed me. Lena Dunham's Sharp Stick didn't work for me either, but I wasn't expecting it to. Master with Regina Hall, another film they dealing with race that I thought kind of wasted its opportunity. But for the most part, I thought this was a just above average Sundance. Some good movies in there. I don't know about if I can pinpoint one movie that's going to be this year's CODA. I don't think there was one for me. Nothing that blew me away on that level. Some stuff I really like, but nothing that was like, wow, people are going to be really buzzing about this later in the year when it comes out. Nothing like that for me. But what was your final takeaway?
Well, it's funny that you compare it to CODA, because I think from a critic standpoint and from those who attended Sundance, that had a really big uproar.
I got warring cats at my feet. Hold on. Go ahead. Keep talking.
That film had a really big uproar, and I feel if you talk to the average person on the street and say, hey, what do you think of CODA? I don't know if they would necessarily know what that is. Right. And I think that's just because, you were telling me with the film the other day, there's stuff that hit at the festival that just doesn't make a sound here. I think that, we talked about earlier, I think Fresh will definitely make an impact, but that's because Sebastian Stan, and apparently it's his year. And then same with I think Navalny will, just because it will premiere on CNN, and we're from DC, so that also has that.
It definitely makes some noise here.
Yeah,
for sure.
The thing that I love that 60% of this year's directors were women. The stories seemed really diverse this year. There's a ton of Black-centered projects and female-centered projects. You know, the abortion trio, as we talked about earlier. I really loved. I loved certain parts of it. It did feel like a very middle of the road festival. You know, I saw 23 films, and most of them were above meh, but still, like, they weren't, you know, they didn't blow me away. You know, I will say that some of the documentaries this year are pretty solid, including, like I said, Navalny, but there's one called My Old School, which is very weird, with Alan Cumming. And you're like, a documentary with Alan Cumming? Yes, just go into it blind. It's very odd, really good. Also, my review on that doesn't have any spoilers in it as well. But yeah, there's a film called American Dreams, The American Dream and Other Fairy Tales by Abigail Disney. She's a co-director on that.
Things about that.
About basically like income inequality across the country, but using it through the Disney Corporation, and how many people who work at the theme parks are on food stamps and living out of their cars and being in shelters and stuff. So the documentaries this year, I feel like, had a stronger presence than a lot of the features. But I'm just really excited to go, even though it was on my couch. And I would love to do it again next year. So I want to do it again next year. I will do it again next year. So anyway. Next
year, hopefully we will be in Park City for Sundance. That is the hope. I figure we'll probably know by the time Middleburg comes around. If Middleburg is in person, Sundance might be in person, but we'll see.
That didn't happen this year, though.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying. It depends on the pandemic, I guess. You know, it's unpredictable. But Cortland, thank you for.
Oh, I was just going to ask, do you think there's anything from this year's festival that we'll see in Middleburg? Because I saw Living, which is based on the Kurosawa film. That I can see there. I can see Call Jane there.
Depending on when it's released.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of these films are going to get held that long. Because I didn't see anything that strikes me as a possible awards contender.
Right.
I don't know if we'll see anything that deep into the year. I figure anything that hasn't been released by that point of the year probably won't be released until 2023. That's kind of the way I look at it. I've seen some movies that are going out this year that were from like the past Sundance. So yeah, I don't know. I can't think of anything necessarily that strikes me as it'll be, unless they decide to hold After Yang. But After Yang's not being held, I don't think. So I don't know.
I mean, there's always at Middleburg. There's always some filler too, like But
yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. But Cortland has been great. Thank you for talking with me about Sundance, kind of recapping this year's festival. You can find her every day at punchdrunkcritics.com, just like you can find me there. You can find us on Twitter. I am at Punchy Critic. Cortland is at Portlandia. Am I getting it right?
On Twitter, Portlandia.
Yes, and of course you can find Punch Drunk Critics on Twitter as well at PDC Movies. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to Cinema Royale. I'm Travis Thompson. I will see you next time. Bye. Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what we're laying down, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest stuff.